So how did you get involved in immigration law to start? What's your background that led you to this?
Yeah, so I don't have a really sexy story about how I got into immigration. I was in law school and I took kind of the survey immigration law class. This was in 1997. So it wasn't a time where a lot of people were going into immigration law. And I really liked the subject. And believe it or not, I loved the statute. So uh, just interpreting the statute and trying to figure out the puzzle of references and cross references was
Mhm.
interesting to me. I mean, I did go into law school wanting to do some type of civil rights work and to represent marginalized groups. So I think that immigration really bridged those worlds for me.
And I just mentioned the statute. It's so important for practitioners to read the statute over and over again, and that's something as I just grow my career. It's always when people ask me about immigration, I'm like, learn the statute and then learn the Code of Federal Regulations and read and reread those. There's immense power in knowing that information, and that's where the actual lawyering comes, and not just following someone else's cover letter or seeing what some website or some even panel says something about that. Read it for yourself as much as possible because the devil is in the details. But did you start practicing when you graduated, or did you go in the academics field? What happened next?
Yeah, so I started practicing. I started working for the late Michael Maggio while I was in law school and was a research assistant to Alex Alenikoff, who is a former INS general counsel. He had just come to Georgetown when I was going to school there. So I really got really good mentorship
Mhm.
early on. And I stayed at Maggio and practiced immigration there with the old agency, Immigration and Naturalization Service,
Mhm.
doing family, employment, NATs, and then also removal work before the immigration courts in Baltimore and Arlington.
Mhm.
So
Were they
I,
full service, or they're these, they're still operating, right? The name sounds familiar. I don't know the Maggio person. I think I've seen that as a DC firm with
mhm.
Jan Peterson is that firm. Is that correct?
Jan Peterson
Yeah.
works there. Now it's a much bigger
Yeah.
place than when I was there. There were 5 attorneys, so it was a smaller staff, but it was such a great place to learn and practice immigration law. Um, I did get the nonprofit bug after 9/11, and I also became somewhat disenchanted for a while with the
Yeah.
practice of immigration after that time. So I had a pretty unconventional path to academia. I left private practice and then I went to work as a lobbyist for a nonprofit for the next 6 years. So this was in the wake of 9/11. So it was a pretty political job,
Yeah.
but it also required a lot of legal analysis. Uh, Oftentimes I'd be the only lawyer in the room if we were in a Hill office. And the first legislative debate I got thrown into was around the creation of the Department of Homeland Security.
Wow. And was this a lobbyist group that focused on immigration related matters?
Yeah, it was a nonprofit. I use the word lobbyist because people understand that term a little bit more than, say, policy associate or legal director. Yeah, this was at the National Immigration Forum.
Mhm.
So it's in Washington, D.C. And Frank Sherry was the executive director at the time. So I was also able to witness 3 unsuccessful cycles of comprehensive immigration reform.
Mhm.
But it was a time where there was bipartisan support for immigration, and there were a lot of different voices who supported pragmatic solutions to our immigration system.
For DHS and the creation of DHS, what angles or issues were discussed that was a focus?
Yeah, there was a lot of debate. So one question was, where should immigration go,
Yeah.
right? Should all of immigration even go into the Department of Homeland Security? There was also a support for a so-called fifth box. so that all of immigration could at least be in one place and overseen by an immigration czar, if you will. And as you know now, it didn't unfold that way. We have immigration in different places, and I would say, especially for the first years of DHS, the left hand of enforcement would often not know what the right hand was doing. So that absence of sort of a centralized leader in immigration was pretty visible and quite different from even the INS model.
In one sense, it's helpful to create a better immigration system under the current leadership. If we did have a centralized node like that, it would be so much more disruptive and destructive as it is. Looking at how they're trying to, if you had the USCIS head that's now the undersecretary for DHS, I think it is, or something like that. If he was the guy they put in charge, or the Miller guy, or one of these, people, let's put it, it would be disastrous. Maybe the inefficiencies of spreading it out maybe helps better, but who knows? It's such a nightmare. So after that opportunity you were in, what did you do next?
So while I was at the forum, I also started teaching, and I think that also helped to inform what I did next. And I was teaching at Howard University and American immigration law in one school and asylum and refugee law in the other. And I really loved it. And it was a good learning experience for me to teach a different range of students in both places, but also teaching is tough, especially when you're also working full time. So it was really the weekends where I would try to inhale as much information as I could. I mean, teaching really keeps you on your toes too, because you want to stay up to date with what's happening. So I, after that run, went on the teaching market. And so I've really only had 3 jobs essentially in the last 21 years or so. And I took this job at Penn State, which is where I am now, and was recruited largely to start their immigrant rights clinic, which I run, and to teach courses in immigration.
Thank you for listening to this episode. For previous episodes and more, please visit the podcast page of our website, immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. You can also visit the Toolbox YouTube and LinkedIn pages to catch the video versions of these podcasts, news updates, and a lot more. Immigration lawyers can also contact me to join the private Facebook page. The email is info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com.